This is my family, Henry, Maddie and Ollie on holiday in Finland this summer, having a great time doing what kids do, learning, playing, enjoying, relaxing. And as a father, I do everything I can to help my children, obviously, and I want to bring them up as best I can in a secure, loving, safe environment. And it's because of that that I find these kind of images so troubling. The fact that there are parents like me who had jobs like me and children like me who are forced to flee their homes because they're not safe and they need to take their children somewhere else, and it's not always a safer place. And I really find it hard to contemplate what it would be like to have to do that. Thankfully, it hasn't happened to me so far. I've spent most of my working life trying to figure out how I can use my education, my passion, my skills to try and solve some of the problems in the world, and there are plenty of them. And the one thing I suppose that drives me the most, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, is it's guilt. It's that I, for some twist of fate, was born in a part of the world where many of the problems of poverty and conflict don't exist or don't yet exist. And I could easily have been born in a place where those things did. And it's not my fault that I wasn't, but it does make me feel a sense of guilt. And one thing I've learned over the years as I've worked in social innovation and worked in and out of international conservation and development is that the things that really matter when you're trying to apply yourself to try and find solutions to these things, it's not money. Money helps, yes, but it's not money. It's not influence or necessarily power. It's not even a great idea, although, of course, a great idea can help. It's paying attention. It's actually taking time to look at what's going on and to realize that the world is not just and not balanced, and then to go really from there. The world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it. One of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein. How many of you in the room would remember this? I would ask you to put your hands up, but I can't actually see anybody out there because of these lights. But I'll assume some of you will know that this was the kidnap of, at the time, around 300 Nigerian schoolgirls from a village in Nigeria. Obviously a terrible event, and this did make the news in our parts of the world, but you still may not have seen much of it. Probably less likely, you heard of this horrific attack in the Congo only last month, where 64 people were hacked to death. I think it's highly unlikely that that appeared in your national news or in your national papers. Or the terrible story of children being abused in a detention camp in Australia with really quite horrific, disturbing images that went along with that. And again, for me, seeing that and thinking that those could be my children in those situations deeply moves and deeply troubles and drives me to want to try to figure out whether there's something I can do to make this situation better. Incidentally, those, as it turned out, 276 Nigerian schoolgirls are still in captivity, approaching 900 days on, and the story has largely been forgotten, which is sadly what tends to happen. It also happened here. Sadly, Syrian children face choices, and their parents face choices between staying and being bombed, and some of you, again, would have seen the image only a couple of weeks ago of that child traumatized, or the one last year which was supposed to change things. It was supposed to be the game changer, that pivotal moment, yet a year on, although some things have changed, it's been forgotten largely. It took me a long time when I knew that picture came out to be able to even look at it, and I'm pretty sure everybody in this room feels the same. But the irony in all of this is, a very, very deep irony, is when you actually read some of the press in our part of the world, we're apparently living in the best time to be alive. These are a great time to be here. Healthcare has improved, life expectancy has improved, but clearly for the many people who have suffered in the Congo and suffered in Syria and the other crises in the Middle East, who are suffering all around the world, children in detention centers in Australia, a developed country, this is not a very good time to be alive. 80% of the planet live off $10 a day or under, and half the world lives on $2.50 a day or under. And the figures vary, but it just shows you the world is incredibly imbalanced. That article about this being the best time to be alive is clearly not really aimed at the majority of people that we live with. And that's a sad indictment, I think. When I was young, my school reports always described me as being too sensitive. And I was, I admit, I get upset very easily. But it was described as a bad thing. It was a negative trait. And, as you're a teenager, it can be a problem. But as I've got older, I've come to learn to make the most of and adapt and make use of my sensitivity and the fact that I get upset quickly. It drives me to change. It drives me to action. Spent a lot of time living and working across Africa trying to understand what life was like for so many people on the planet who were the lucky ones not born in the privilege that I had. And so I moved around the continent. I worked on primate conservation. I worked with animals. I worked with people. And I wasn't looking to fix anything. I just wanted to understand what is going on. I never thought for one moment I would ever be able to contribute to a solution, but the first thing is to understand. You will never create a meaningful solution to a problem unless you understand the problem. And I found this quote when I was in my teens, which I've really followed my life to this ever since. I expect to pass through this world but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness I can show to any fellow creature, let me do it now. Let me not defer or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. Sometimes we only have one chance to make that difference, and I think it's important that we don't lose that chance. My chance came in 2003 when I went to South Africa and I started to see mobile phones in places where you shouldn't be seeing mobile phones. Expensive devices, not much network coverage, but they were appearing. And non-profits working in South Africa and Mozambique, where I also worked, they were asking how these phones could be useful tools for them in outreach and data collection and other work. And at the time, it was not clear at all that mobile technology was going to be remotely useful. It was expensive, coverage was weak, they were technical and so on. But clearly today, they have huge potential, and our challenge is in figuring out how to make the most of that potential. I developed a messaging platform in 2005, which allows grassroots communities using very low-tech equipment to create a messaging hub and then blast text messages to community members, farmers, healthcare workers, human rights activists, conservationists, whoever it might be, and get replies. It opened up the possibility for widespread communication for the first time among these grassroots users who, for me, were the ones that needed help. They were the ones living every day with the problems they were facing. Not me, because I knew I was going home. I released the software at the end of 2005, and since then it's been used in 170 countries around the world. So almost every country now there are users. And 20 to 30 million people are benefiting from all those uses in all sorts of manners of development work. And something obviously I'm very, very proud of. But the thing that I'm particularly proud of is how empowering those users really spoke to them and really inspired them to go out and try to find ways of solving the problems they were living with themselves. And we started getting these pictures back from communities and groups using the software around the world. And it, for me, just beautifully captured that enthusiasm, that excitement of being able to use a technology and solve a problem themselves. Here's just a few pictures here. I also, about 2 years ago, received a big wad of letters in the post from a school in Philadelphia from about, I don't know, must have been about 20, 12, 13-year-olds who had read about my work in a National Geographic geography book, and they decided they all wanted to write me a letter, which of course I was very touched by, and I have kept them to this day. And they were just genuinely excited by how a very simple tool created by somebody who didn't have money or influence, or perhaps not even a great idea, but persistence, managed to create something that had had such a big impact. And I think it's important that we remember that today's youth are not only the problem solvers of the future, they're also the leaders of the future, and we need to inspire them. We need to show that things are possible. And in many cases, the problems that are being created today are problems they're going to have to solve, including climate change, which is probably one of the biggest ones that they're going to face. The point for me is we need to take advantage of that enthusiasm and that love and passion for change and for caring. As Archbishop Tutu famously said, do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world. And it's true. These problems, yes, are big, but they can be solved if we come together and all just chip away at them. So how can we do something? How can we start our journey of trying to contribute to solutions to some of these really quite horrific problems? Well, first of all, as I did, understand, read, get books, join local meetups, find people who share your passion. Just take time to understand the deep-rooted causes of the problem. And it's not usually the one you'll get on TV or even in the newspapers. It's often far deeper than that, and certainly don't always believe what politicians tell you. Empathize. Think about, like I did when I saw those harrowing pictures of those fathers carrying their children these great distances. Think about how you would feel if it was you who had to go through what these people were going through. Empathy is a big thing right now, but it is very important to actually think about that. Put yourself in their shoes. Try and go to people who need help. Go to the communities, if you can, who need the help, and spend time with them. Spend time learning and sharing with them. Aim high. Pick something, a massive problem, which you will probably never, ever see your contribution to solving. Something like climate change, deforestation, perhaps the refugee crisis on a global level. But pick something, but don't worry about the fact that you might never know what difference your $10 makes or your €10 makes. Don't worry about that, but still support a big global cause as much as you can. And that's not just through money, it can be through volunteering and other things. But at the same time, aim low. Pick something in your own community, pick something in your own country where if you do work at it, if you do join others and you do work with others to try to find a solution and to make lives better, you can tangibly see the improvement, because that's what will drive you on. For me, it certainly drove me on in my work, to be able to see people responding very positively to the efforts that I made. So in short, I think we can really drill this down to three very simple messages. The first one is just pay attention. Read, listen, be open. Take time to see what's going on in the world. Put your smartphone down at bedtime and read something. Care. Care about what's going on. Make it matter to you. Don't brush it aside and forget about it. And then do something. Take that passion, that concern, that care, and do something with it. The purpose of life is not to be happy. It's to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you lived at all. Again, I believe very strongly in this quote. And although I really hate much of what I see going on in the world today, I think I will hate myself even more if I don't do everything I can to solve some of those problems. Thank you very much.